Hello everyone, and I hope everyone had a wonderful week. Um, I hope you know that this week I'm just making sure that everyone can see the live. Um, I hope you had a excellent week and you got to do everything you wanted to do. I, however, got one day of the week where I got a sleep in and it didn't quite go down like that. The neighbours decided it was their time to let the kids ride on mower and let me know that all their children were actively awake. So that's how my week turned out. It was awful. In that sense, the one day of the week where I'm like, just let me sleep in a little, I worked hard this week, just let me have this. But no love for me. Okay, so as you guys have been accustomed to seeing, loads of robodebt content as well as some talk on other subjects. There's Death in Detention Center lawsuit being brought to Alice Springs, Help for Ukraine, the Got Your Questions, protests against George Pell, pushing the defrocking of former Governor General Peter Hollingsworth, Lauchlin Murdoch's lawsuit against Crikey, and Pauline Hanson's act of dumb. Now, some people have better ways of phrasing that. I don't like to muck around with words. And really, she doesn't get the eloquent answers when she says something so incredibly stupid. So let's jump right in. So, like every other week, we've discussed robodebt. What does that mean for this inquiry? This week seemed like massive explosive testimony, and yet all at the same time, no one's really paid attention. So take a look at some of the things I found this week. So, that should be with that. One sec, some of it's out of order, and I only just noticed. Okay. So, first up, we're going to start with an article. We have Stuart Roberts, what he knew and when he knew it, and how did it go on the legality side. I would like to say that he knew from the jump, and I have a feeling that he did. But the difference between facts and the reality are two totally different things. So let's have a look at what that looks like. Former Government Services Minister Stuart Roberts was warned robodebt scheme could lead to civil action. Former Government Service Minister Stuart Roberts was warned continuing the illegal robodebt scheme could lead to civil action against the Royal Commission has heard. The public hearings in Brisbane focusing on criticism on the controversial coalition area debt recovery scheme from the media after it was implemented in 2015. Annette Musilano currently worked as the Chief Operating Officer at Services Australia, formerly Department of Human Services, DHS, giving evidence at the Commission over 2 days. Now remember that these were government appointees. So when you see DHS spiral into some sort of shit show underneath the coalition, understand it's because they put someone there to make it that shit show. Actually, it's not supposed to be, and it's supposed to be done with grace and dignity for each client that walks into their door. But that's not how they've done it now. as former chief counsel for the DHS, one of two government agencies that helped deliver the program. Ms. Mussolano had a key oversight in the departmental legal matters, including robodebt. For the first time, the Commission was shown a brief sent to the government uh, with the Service Minister in 2019, summarising the advice from the Solicitor General that found the scheme was unlawful. Now, that there should have the media going wild. Why isn't it? And whose fault is that? Well, we're going to find out later that the farthest reaching media isn't friendly to reality. They like to help the government create a narrative. And that's exactly what they did. So, the brief, which is signed by Mr. Robert, said that the continuing administration of the program is currently, in its current form, may amount to malfeasance in public office. Yeah, that's an incredible admission. How dare anyone put us in that position? And just so you can see this article for yourselves, I want to drop this one into the comment sections of this, just so you get to see outwardly what that looks like. Next, I want to talk about as it goes on. This is because the continued administration of the program would contribute to the argument that the department have been raising and recovering debts in bad faith. Of course they were. This isn't because a certain government did it. This is because that it is, in a way, because the LNP were the certain government to implement it. But it was more the fact that anyone that wants to do what they did, and to know that they could be found, not only did they know that it was unlawful, but could amount to malfeasance. I mean, that tells you everything that you need to know. But we're going to watch a few clips on exactly what come out of this week. And it was quite telling. Apart from a lot of answers from Christian Porter that he didn't know, there were some really striking things that he did. And the admittance that he did make were very telling. So stay tuned for that, and I hope you like it. Counsel assisting Angus Scott KC told the Commission the malfeasance in public office was a civil action and could be brought against some of them in public office who unlawfully exercise their power, including being recklessly indifferent to the likelihood of causing harm to the plaintiff. Now, if you keep in mind, Bill Shorten did ultimately take up a civil class action lawsuit against the creators of robodebt once it was fully leaked that it was illegal and that action shouldn't take place, which also costed the government a lot more money. So not only did they know it was illegal and that they shouldn't be pursuing this, but as I'll show you later, that they had a way of framing the narrative of how this would sound acceptable. So let's continue. Mr. Scott asks Ms. Mussolino, would you agree that there was a risk of action and malfeasance in public office if the scheme was not brought to an end, at least in respect to the use of averaging? Yes. See, that's all you need to know. I think I would have understood that potential risk. That's what you need to know right now. They knew that the legal advice wasn't solid. They knew that they shouldn't have proceeded and did it anyway. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that given that it was deemed illegal, they were still trying to find ways to reheat this program. Like, they weren't done, not even by a long shot. So if you ever give these sorts of fool's power again, I can guarantee you it won't go the way that we need any government to behave. Okay, so let's start with some of the videos. Okay, so I think this is a great place to start. Okay, so here.
The discrepancy letters didn't identify the extent of the discrepancy. They merely referred to the PAYG information summary and not what had been reported to Centrelink?
Yes, and I was concerned about that.
Do you recall taking those concerns up with anyone?
Yes, I did.
And who was that?
I took the opportunity of I bumped into Melissa Golightly in a corridor, and I took the opportunity because I thought it would be useful in a friendly way to engage her in the discussion. And I outlined to her a number of concerns that I had. I told her that I thought the letter was bad. I asked whether it had been focus tested. By that I mean tested with groups of customers to see whether they understood it. I was concerned that it didn't have a call to action in the form of a phone number, which I thought was decidedly unhelpful.
See, they didn't have a way of getting hold of people. Let me break that down. So they made the process difficult to dispute the robodebt claims. And they were creating obstacles so people would just pay the debt instead of being able to dispute the debt. That is also going to come up as a legal battle later.
In addition to that, I'd also asked to be shown how the system worked because I felt it was, this is not uncommon for me. I felt I needed to understand what the customer experience was. And once I went into the system, I found it was incredibly difficult to find the button that enabled you to start to resolve the problem. So I raised these concerns with Ms. Golightly, and it ended up a very heated and aggressive discussion where she told me, firstly, that the program had been pilot tested. Secondly, that this was business as usual. And thirdly, that basically it was none of my business.
And that's basically the approach that they took.
Following
their business.
That exchange with Ms. Golightly, did you consider whether you should take it further, that is, raise it with the Secretary?
I decided not to.
That's the thing, deciding not to, which is utterly just such bad practice. I don't know where they get that idea that they just don't act further. There was a lot of barriers here where they should have acted and they didn't. So let's take a look at the next one. Okay, here's the next one. We get to hear more.
Knowledge of the actual percentage of fraud cases. And it was minuscule.
So,
that is, you could go further than saying, in some cases there is deliberate fraud and in some cases there is this other category. You could actually say in your interviews, and we know that fraud represents 0.1% according to historical statistics in respect of this measure.
So there was a number of points which you were making. The first point that you were suggesting was that I should have put out a press release.
You've answered that.
And I don't think, from my media experience, that me putting out such a press release would have had the same impact as doing a current affair.
See, now
I don't think any media outlet would have picked it up. Now, it might have been that the journalist would.
Now he's admitting to the media side of it. That part's going to be important. Why? Because that fundamentally means that he knew that this was a bad moment. So he was going to friendlier sort of media for his coverage.
Read it. They wouldn't have picked it up, and certainly the journalists would have listened and heard my transcripts, because my transcripts got sent around to all the journalists in any case.
You may not have listened closely to the question, but it was whether you could have gone further in your interviews and other dealings with the media.
I was
what you
coming
said.
to that. That was the second part of the question.
All right.
The first part I understood to be concerning putting out a press release. And the second part, in relation to my media interviews, could I have gone further in terms of saying that fraud, which is a very small part, in hindsight, I probably could have. I mean, when you're doing media interviews, they're typically very short interviews. It's not like this process. You are communicating in shorthand, even doing a 5-minute radio interview, trying to communicate a lot of material quickly. But I'd accept that if I wanted to completely clarify, I could have gone further.
But then it gets a little bit worse, and then you're like, no, this can't get much worse, but it does. Oh, that's not playing for you. Share screen, and I was wondering why it was.
And which means that they were, in most cases, at people's fingertips to be able to enter into. And that's what I was particularly focused on.
I think you're talking about a very computer literate class of recipient.
And
might work for the youth allowance people, the students. But there's a whole body of people who may not even have access to a computer, let alone to online bank statements, let alone have the sort of account where they're looking at it online.
No, but well, and alternatively, they of course could go into the bank themselves and get their bank statements from the bank.
And we've been hearing about people not being able to afford it, being charged.
Yeah, pretending like it was all free.
And the banks did have hardship provisions. I mean, in most cases, and I recall looking at this question, that in most cases you could get your bank records for free, certainly for most of the major banks.
He knows that's not
that there were hardship provisions. And if my recollection serves me correctly, the department started to work closely with those banks as well to ensure that they were making them available to.
I know it costed people a lot of money to get those records and to be able to prove it, on top of getting the pressure from the government. So no, he's entirely wrong. This is why they lost their civil suit.
That was absolutely one of my focal points, to ensure that it was as simple an exercise as possible for a recipient.
Okay, so the next one we're going to watch details exactly that. So here we are at the point where, hold on, Rachel Miller talks about it all. Okay,
aware that the Prime Minister was unhappy with, you know, the sort of escalating media issue around this. And Minister Porter, at the time when Minister Tudge was away, we were trying to sort of decline as many media opportunities as we could, obviously, because the main minister was away, Minister Porter was around, but obviously everybody was trying to have a bit of a break. So we were trying to just contain it, I suppose, at the time. But that media strategy was quite comprehensive that I developed in January to shut down the story. And that involved, you know, placing stories with the, you know, the more friendly media, the right-wing media.
The more friendly media. Now, this part's going to be super duper important as they try and gaslight you next election into believing that there's some media out there for you, that your message is equally getting played on the left as the right. This isn't just deceiving, it's downright lying. And if they want to play that game, sure, I will just play them this. This is the moment that you realize we have had people. They are mucking around. They are legit going to make it more difficult for us to fight back. Because she will say this in this setting. We will get to another election cycle and they're going to be like, oh, there's plenty out there. But no, they weren't done. I had to trash the ABC just to take down, because they thought it was too left wing, which is rubbish, but it doesn't matter. They get to do that.
About how the coalition was actually catching people who were cheating the welfare system. And that...
Listen to how politically motivated she sounded in this. So she knew it was bad. She knew it was illegal. And then she knew that it didn't look good. So what did she do? She put out deliberate spin stories. Look, we're going to actively dox people publicly to make them feel a little bit ashamed because you didn't look good, that you were implementing an illegal system. Yeah, no, that's a horrendous thing to do.
Media, including the likes of A Current Affair or others, has a lot more reach. The commercial television programs, the 2GB radio, that type of thing, has a lot more reach. So actually the message that was getting to people on the ground was that the coalition is cracking down on welfare cheats, whereas in the kind of, left-wing Canberra circles, it appeared to be quite a crisis. But we were getting feedback from the Prime Minister's office that actually this was playing quite well in marginal seats, Western Sydney, that type of thing.
Which was played.
And that's all that mattered. It played well for her, so she got to do it, and that's what she's happy with. So, this is what they do. They get to manipulate the system, and the public, and make you believe that it's totally fine that they're lying to you about the premise of robodebt. It's totally fine that lives were lost. It's totally fine that it was illegal. It's totally fine that less than not even 1% of welfare recipients participated in any fraud. No, it's fine that we did averaging, which we knew totally would screw people over. No, it's totally fine that we made it very difficult for these victims to get anything from it. No, all that's totally fine. We're going to go to the media that is ours, and it's our biggest. It's the biggest in the country, and we're going to put it out there like that's fine. Are you okay with that? Because I'm not okay with that. Let's not be okay with that altogether. I don't see there's a point in making that acceptable.
Playing quite well.
Well, the narrative of that robodebt was actually playing quite well in terms of people actually supported it and were supportive of the notion of the government cracking down on anybody who was cheating the welfare system.
So she knew it was shameful. That's why she gets all these secret little, we'll just give you a bit of money and you can just go away now. That's why they do this stuff. They don't care. But that's the appalling part to this. We haven't cared as a nation about how these people were treated. We don't care about the 2,000 lives that were lost enough to go, oh no, we all should be tuned into it. The networks haven't picked it up either, which is reprehensible. But I'm going to show you more on this little moment because that didn't quite cover everything that she did. Personal information of robodebt victims was released to journalists in an effort to deter them from speaking out. A former media advisor to ex-Human Services Minister Aladdin Tudge told the Royal Commission. That's what they did. That's what the intent was. They got their just delights. Now, if anyone ever comes up to me and then goes, you know, I really can't tell the difference between the left and the right media, I'm going to be like, well, here's the basic synopsis of what you need to know. You're going to have a right-wing, very biased media telling you that they're for the people, but they're actually not. And here's a great example of that. Robodebt is that example. But if you're unsure of what I mean, sorry, I'm going to fix that. My chair's bothering me. If you're unsure of just how serious that part is, I'm going to inform you that that's crazy. You know, that there's like this same thing. The left will openly go to you and then say, we actually do care about what happens to you. Even as far as Bill Shorten going, I'm going to help you file a class action lawsuit. I'm going to be on the right side of history here. We're going to talk about climate change. We're going to talk about, you know, improving lives in actual terms. That's what we're going to do. No, it's disingenuous from the jump, and they know it. Okay, so we're not done there. There's more. There was a company, PwC, that was contracted to do work for the robodebt saga. Now, this is where it gets super interesting. These people were implemented to come up with a report based upon what happened with robodebt, right, from the government. And they received a lot of money to do so. And when that report was close to being finished, the people were like, look, you can come and have a look at this report. You can come and release it like you're supposed to, and yada, yada, yada. Government walks back and then goes, no, we don't need it. We're not going to release that because it wasn't friendly to their narrative. So then what ended up happening is PwC just wanted to make money and then doesn't tell anyone that it had this report locked and loaded and ready to go. And as a result, they were more interested in making money off this government contract than actual liability to themselves by not releasing this report. It's incredible to watch how bad this thing turned out. So I think it's this one. Yep. Okay, gotcha. So check this part out. Here, it's incredible to watch. These this is why you can't privatize things. Just very quickly, before I jump to it, this is why you can't do it. Because every time you go to a private entity, they will find a way to deflect from what is a governmental responsibility, like releasing a report and actually ensuring that the public gets access to that report. But because it is a private entity that wrote it out about the robodebt saga, we won't actually get to view it because it's deemed private. And that's just unacceptable to me. I don't understand how we got to that point where private entities are allowed to play games with us like that. Anyway, here's the video. Okay, so...
How do you get to a point just at the time you've almost got it finalised where it's then clear that a presentation you've given a couple of weeks earlier will fit the bill?
Yeah, I don't recall the conversation. Sorry.
Who at PwC would have been involved in that conversation with the department?
I'm not sure.
It was your team. You were the lead. Who was dealing with Jason McNamara on a regular basis?
So I was, Ty and Frank were as well.
So it's one of you three who had that conversation with Mr. McNamara.
So they can't remember who had a conversation. Now, these people were paid like $8 million to do all this crazy, reporting and stuff. And they can't even remember who exactly spoke to who. That there is how corrupt the LNP were. And we're willing to accept these answers like, no, that's totally normal that they don't have the records of who spoke to who. This is a royal commission. Why are we accepting? Yeah, no, I don't really remember, mate. Why are we accepting that? That's so weird. There should be if you can't recall in this government agency what you did and when you did it and why you did it, not only should you have to hand your salary back, but I'm starting to think after watching this that there should be jail time imposed, particularly with a system like the robodebt moment, because the robodebt system was institutionally designed to do harm. And they knew it every step of the way. They knew all that legal advice was, no, this is a super bad idea. But each time they would peel it back like an onion and leave that very damaging part out. And that's where we're at this point with this robodebt saga. It's not going to go away, and I don't understand why the media has decided this isn't an issue.
Like I say, I don't recall, so I don't recall whether or not a conversation. I don't recall how we were informed. But
Have you identified an email?
No.
Have you found a text message?
No.
Have you looked for a text message?
Yes.
Have you looked for an email?
Yes.
Have you looked for emails within PwC which communicate the decision not to give the report
Yes.
in response to this email? It is you responding saying,
he's now, see that eye looking like each way, he's trying to figure out how he's going to answer this. Understand that this is a deliberate ploy when you know that the answer you're about to get is very, very carefully thought through. Which lie can I tell? That's what I mean. Why is this not being played? Anyone looking at it would go, no, he's going to say anything to get himself off the hot seat here. It's incredible.
as it turns out, we don't need to give this anymore, so just shelve it.
Yeah, he was told to just shelve the
We
report.
weren't able to find any email correspondence to that effect. I don't recall seeing anything in the documents we produced.
Surely you must, as the lead on the project, have gone back to Catherine Campbell and said, you've paid for the report, we've done the work, why don't you want it?
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
Why not?
Because we didn't. There was still work to be done to finalise the report.
What?
Not a lot. Was there?
No, probably not a lot. But still some.
Look at your feet, buddy. Look at your feet. That'll help. And I mean, that's incredible, right? We're only just getting to that part where, they had advice that it was illegal. And then they've got these private companies that are, coming together like on a media front that are like meant to be like these private entities. But we know that Peter Costello runs Nine, right? So there's talk about them running to places like A Current Affair and Alan Tudge deliberately saying that on this particular program that he will send them to jail on that program. And what did Rachel Miller say earlier? She said deliberately this, we were going to our more friendlier media, the wider reaching media. So that's everything in a nutshell. They know. So next election, make sure we remind them. We remember them saying that they have friendly media they can go to that is more wider reaching. That's how they get elected. It's insane. But not just how they get elected, how they get to sell a message. Because she also said, we get to go out there and tell them about one of our victims kind of thing. She's like, we get to tell them about someone that we caught. And it doesn't matter. That one person that they catch, is that less than 1% of the whole welfare recipients? That doesn't excuse what they did later. This averaging stuff was so damn wrong. It was wrong then and it's wrong now. And understand this. There was actual words written to the effect of, if this doesn't work, we can reheat it another way. So they're not done with this shit show. Understand that very moral compass that they do not have. They aren't done playing with this. Okay, so now there's more on that. Okay, so I have some amazing people on Twitter that share some just awesome stuff. Okay, so then there was this stark admission from Jason McMahon from the Department of Effect of the government. Just wanted the money and didn't care what they do with the compliance to achieve this, i.e. hurting people of no concern. They just wanted the cash. See, I knew it was at $8 billion. Also to do with the government announcing measures only caring about the money. They have set this up to save $8 billion in fiscal terms of the government and doesn't care what they do with the compliance to try and achieve this, other than the department doing something politically silly. They don't care. JM is very supportive of the idea, especially considering the large amount of money they're chasing in the budget measures. FVH will be a big shift away from how the department currently does things. So they knew what they were doing, and they knew that they were implementing these things not legally. So they changed the head of the DHS. They got very media savvy people in to do these deliberate interviews. They kept rejecting calls from, say, the ABC and other media, The Guardian and others, that they knew would ask real questions. So at that same time, they were messing around with the ABC. And they were like, we're just going to change the head of the ABC before we actually give them any of our time. But even when they did that, they had to make sure it sounded as if we did it and it wasn't politically motivated when we did it. So in all of this, they had a billion little tentacles out to not only pull off the robodebt, but to pull off the messaging of the robodebt. But they didn't just go that far. They also went as far to say, if this fails, here's our plan B. This isn't just cruel and unusual and disgraceful. Each and every time you hear a conservative say, I believe in conservative values, I want to smack them. This is not any conservative value I want to be attached to. Why would you want to be attached to something that you know is illegal and attacks the poor for no reason other than the person is just poor? That's reprehensible. And then they're like, oh, no, that was that liberal, not this liberal. No, they're all the bloody same. There isn't a distinguished liberal amongst them. Because if there was, somebody would have shut this shit show down. There was nobody inside government that was actively going, oh, this is a super bad idea. Let's not punish people for being poor. That tells you that they are all one in the same entity of the same beast that they want to be. This is their beast. They want to be this. If they wanted to be something else, show me that. Prove it. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is the way conservatives operate. Not just here. I modeled it in the US terms as well. This is there. In the US it's worse. You have a senator openly saying, I just want to sunset all legislation, including Medicare and Medicaid. Same deal. They have the same buttons to push everywhere. They just act like they're for family values. Those family values aren't great either. So let's move along to our next one. So now that we've unilaterally gone through every part of what they did and how they did it, now we're going to see another story. So now we've got death in a detention center. So this is really tragic news. Death of an Iraqi refugee at Villawood Detention Center under investigation. Authorities have launched an investigation into a death of an Iraqi detainee at Villawood Detention Center in Sydney's West. The advocate said the 28-year-old refugee was held at the center for the past 5 years and was found dead in the facility and was suspected suicide Monday morning. The Department of Home Affairs Australian Border Force confirmed the death and said the incident would be probed. Remember, these people were treated inhumanely for no reason other than they were legally seeking asylum from places where we played a role in making really awful. Our country actively took roles in making it difficult for these people to live and prosper in these areas. So keeping that in mind, so let's go with that. The Department and Australian Border Force express their condolences to the man's family and friends. The department spokesman said in the statement, a matter has been referred for the investigation to the appropriate agencies. As this matter will be subject to ongoing investigations, it would be appreciated to know. It would not be appreciated to further comment because of our legal implications. That's smart. You are smart to say nothing. Even if you are guilty of sin, you can get into so much more trouble saying something. And that's what our fundamental rights do uphold. Whether I agree with it or not is inconsequential, really. That's the way our laws operate. So, next we're going to talk about a lawsuit in Alice Springs. So, I'm not sure how many of you have seen this. Alice Springs residents weigh in on $1.5 billion lawsuit action against the Northern Territory government amid crime wave. And this will fail. Understand, this will fail. It's not meritorious. You can't blame government for actions like this. It doesn't matter how you view what's happening in Alice Springs. This will fail because they can't control this kind of thing. Thousands of Alice Springs residents have gathered to share their grief in rising crime rates. Look at the majority of them that are wanting to do it. It's rather convenient, don't you think? They want to sue for negligence. A meeting was held Monday evening amid growing community frustration over a surge of alcohol-fueled violence and property crime, with some business owners alleging they've suffered losses during the government inaction. Speaking at a packed convention centre, the organiser, Garth Thompson, said the Northern Territory government had neglected Alice Springs in a range of levels and said residents deserve to be compensated for what the government has put us through. Yeah, let him. I'm more than proud to stand here and say that as the community of Alice Springs are about to sue the government for $1.5 billion in compensation, the business owner told the crowd. He's so proud of himself. Look, part of the problem, not part of a solution. Mr. Thompson said he'd been prepping a class action for a couple of weeks and had consulted lawyers. Both federally and territory governments have promised to allocate extra money for the policing and short-term bottle shop closures. Both had said they were considering reimposing blanket alcohol bans for Indigenous communities. Now, I don't think that's the answer. I don't think banning alcohol anywhere is the answer. I think if you're going to do this, you need to more fund alcohol and drug programs. This is why prohibition never worked. It is a failure. Banning something doesn't make it better. It just doesn't. It's fundamentally flawed. So we will see how that pans out in the wash. So next, we're going to talk about help for Ukraine. So Australia is helping France to supply Ukraine with artillery shells. Australia has partnered with France to supply Ukraine with 115mm artillery shells, and Defence Minister Richard Marles said to his counterpart, Sebastian Lecornu, I think it is, has announced several thousand 155mm shells will be manufactured jointly by French arms supplier and would come with a multi-million-dollar price tag. Now, keep in mind, as I'm saying this, I would prefer peace be the option. But because that's not an option, and peace talks have failed, and that's because, if I'm honest, the people having the talks kind of are making it more of a problem. Not Ukraine, of course. They definitely don't want this. But other countries meddling are making it a little bit worse and a little bit harder to make this thing go away. Okay. So that's the war on Ukraine. I hope things do settle down soon. Next, we're going to talk about got your questions. Okay, hold on. Oh my gosh. Okay. Here it is. Okay, so have a look at this. Tony Burke eviscerates injured program despite attempts of a spring gotcha question. So sorry. It's been a very, very long day and my neighbour did not let me rest. So you're left with me being an awful human. All right, so take a listen to this gotcha question from Andrew Probyn and how Tony Burke responds.
Andrew Probyn.
Mr. Burke, Andrew Probyn from the ABC. In his monthly essay, Jim Chalmers has talked about values-based capitalism and reimagining and redesigning markets. Could you define for us what values-based capitalism is, in your own words? And secondly, would you explain how your definition of values-based capitalism would apply itself to workplace reform, whether it's a lot more interventionist and the like?
Well, in terms of the second principle, I think you can get that answer by what we've already done. In terms of the argument that has been used for so long, which is, oh, look, we can't give people a wage rise because inflation is low. Oh, we can't give people a wage rise because inflation is high. Oh, productivity, if business profits go up, then wages will automatically increase. All of those arguments were put, and the truth is, if you value and you have the principle that you want people to have a better chance at being able to pay their bills, then government has to pass laws that help people get more remuneration. That, in terms of principles that make a difference to people's lives at home, is huge, and it is exactly what we've been doing and what this year's agenda in terms of the legislation I went to will go to as well. The only other thing I'd say in terms of the first half of the question with the different comments that have been out there, I think you can actually find a lot of these values in the mission statements of major companies. You can actually find some pretty strong values in the various mission statements that are put forward by the BCA itself. So I know there's been a rush to say, oh, how can we deal with anything like this? Have a look at what a whole lot of major companies put in black and white as the principles that they espouse as mattering. It's a lot more than bottom line. For government to be backing those concepts is right and proper, and I'm really glad that Jim's written the essay.
So in your own words, what is
No, I've given you the answer.
Capitalism?
You get one go. I've given you the answer and I explained. It's not going to be in the terms that you want, but I've given you the terms of my answer and I hope you loved it.
Well, thank you, Minister, for imposing that discipline. It's obviously the parliamentary experience. Ben Westcott.
And that's the thing. These got your questions fail. And they fail for conservative media outlets because they do it in such a disingenuous way. Tony Burke's are able to easily establish the false premise of the question. And that's super important to remember. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about, which I think is huge. The protest against George Pell. What happened at this protest and why is it so important? Now, as we know, there are certain organisations that played an institutional role of abuse of children. One of them was, unfortunately, the Catholic Church. For any person that has been harmed or knows someone that has been harmed, please seek help. These things have costed lives. These issues have costed lives. Fundamentally, I want to tell you that Your pain is real, and everything you experienced should not and will not be downplayed here. Your pain is entirely something that was avoidable, and there should have been more people in your corner to act on your behalf. So I want to let you know that this is a very serious situation. So let's get into that. Okay. So the New South Wales applies Supreme Court to stop LGBTIQ outside George Pell's funeral. New South Wales police will attempt to block a protest by the community for action. Now remember, many judges are Catholic. So I don't think it would have been done in a fair and balanced way, if you want to call it that. Let's use a conservative term against them. This wouldn't have been fair and balanced. New South Wales Police Commissioner will apply to the New South Wales Supreme Court to prohibit the protest, saying in a statement that the safety concerns of the community must come first. Despite attempts at negotiations with organisers, safety concerns associated with the proposed assembly, which there were none, are mitigated without amendments to the proposal. The police force recognises the support of rights of individuals. They exercise their right of free speech peacefully in assembly. However, the first priority will always be the safety of the wider community. Considering that they did not pose any threat, that's weird. Cardinal Pell will lie in state at St. Mary's Cathedral before the funeral's mass. Okay, so what ended up happening is that they took to removing the ribbons that victims had placed, recognising their problem that they experienced in the Catholic network. There were a lot of institutions that were found to do this within the Royal Commission, and that won't make it go away, but recognising that there's a problem and making them address the problem is part of the solution. Okay. Next, I want to talk about the pushing of defrocking former Governor General Peter Hollingsworth. Okay, so this is a big one. Push to have disgraced former Governor General Peter Hollingsworth defrocked to be heard by Anglican Church panel. Beth Heinrich has been waiting for years for justice. For decades, justice for the sexual abuse that began in the hands of Anglican priests in the 1950s. She was just 14. And justice for trauma and humiliation inflicted on her by former Governor General Peter Hollingsworth, who blamed her on national television for the abuse she suffered. As a teen, Ms. Heinrich was abused by the priest Donald Sherman, who later became a bishop. He groomed her over years, and Ms. Heinrich says the trauma of her abuse was so compounded by Dr. Hollingsworth telling Australian Story in 2002 that it was not sex abuse by Sherman, but rather the other way around, because, yeah, that's how disgusting these people behave, you know, how these people in high power behave. When something is found out, they go to deflect it and cover. You know, it's awful. He's not a fit person. He's not a fit character to have the holy orders. 5 years ago, the Anglican Church investigator said that there was enough evidence on the public record to defrock the disgraced former Archbishop for his failure to act on evidence of sexual abuse within the church. Yet Dr. Hollingsworth remains part of it, and the 87-year-old draws a vice-regal pension worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Victim survivors of the Anglican abuse hope that the change after this week, when the church's special independent investigator, Kuya, finally hears the case against Hollingsworth. Okay, it said that in 2018, ABC revealed that Dr. Hollingsworth was the subject of multiple complaints from the survivors of sex abuse at the hands of the Anglican clergy and teaching staff at Brisbane Diocese, where Dr. Hollingsworth served as an archbishop in the 1990s. Those complaints were investigated by Kuya, but are still yet to be finalised at the long overdue hearing set to begin on Monday. But survivors are skeptical after the scheduled hearings were cancelled at the last minute. I'm not joking. This is probably the longest running case in the child abuse of the world. In the world, Chris Goddard said, an abuse expert and veterans of survivors. Victim blaming and obfuscation of the church and consistent delays reinforce the trauma for survivors, expert says. He says, as far as I'm concerned, she's still being abused. Dr. Goddard says about Miss Hendrich. The ABC doctor contacted Dr. Hollingsworth's office and legal counsel with detailed questions, but he did not receive a response. Royal Commission found that Dr. Hollingsworth made serious error in judgment. He was forced to resign as the Governor-General in 2003 after a serious revelation over his handling of sexual abuse, allegations against priests and teaching staff while he was the Archbishop in Brisbane. That's just tragic. I'm trying to get through this in like the most respectful way, but I don't think. A 2002 inquiry by the Anglican Diocese of Brisbane found that it allowed pedophile priest John Elliott to continue working until the retirement, despite Elliott admitting to Dr. Hollingsworth that he had sexually abused 2 boys. I'm really trying to hold on here. This is hard. This is the Royal Commission into the Institutional Responses into Child Sexual Abuse found Dr. Hollingsworth made a serious error, a judgment, and failed to take into account the psychiatrist's advice, and that Elliott was an untreatable pedophile who posed a risk to reoffending. In the months following the report, Melbourne Archbishop Philip Fryer renewed Dr. Hollingsworth's permissions of officiate, and a decision which infuriated survivors. 5 years ago, the ABC revealed that Kuya, Director of Professional Standards of told sexual abuse survivor that there was more than enough justification for Dr. Hollingsworth unfit of the holy orders. That's no, it's awful. Okay, we're nearly there. Lauchlin Murdoch Win against Crikey. Now, as you know, Lauchlin Murdoch was suing Crikey. Lauchlin Murdoch has a court win in defamation against battle against Crikey. News outlet Crikey was advised of being sued by Lauchlin Murdoch was a narrative hook. It needed to appeal to a larger audience. So basically the court said, you got a bigger audience, you got more subscribers, you were able to ask the community that you were in for funds to be able to do that. Therefore, we can't see any harm being done to you as an organisation. And this allowed Lauchlin Murdoch to win the case upon that predication that they were actually seen agitating Lauchlin Murdoch within the confines of, the article, here, I've got to find it. It heard Miss Haywood sent public relations from the Popularies on August 8th. I believe Mr. Murdoch was not going to sue. We do feel it is unlikely that they're going to issue a writ in the concerns of the court. So Crikey's profile made it sound like a David and Goliath battle, and then subsequently went on to fundraise for that. And this is why they lost their case. We need to do something about our judges. It's crazy. I'm just not liking some things I'm seeing at this point. Okay, so it's very conservative leaning, kind of friendly sort of stuff. I get it. They did create clickbait around it and they were fundraising off it. They did get substantially more subscribers from filing the lawsuit, and I understand that law, that Crikey didn't suffer a loss as a result of this filing with the Murdochs, which is why it was so quick, the judgment against Crikey. The judges well, Crikey, you brought this and you actually were better off for it, so why is this happening? And that's why Crikey lost. It's unfortunate, but that's where we're at with that lawsuit. The last one I want to talk about is a statement that Pauline Hanson had made in Parliament, and it was amazingly dumb. I don't have any eloquent words dealing with Pauline Hanson, so I get a little bit belligerent when I hear her say things that are just so incredibly stupid. It's so easy for it to go, why would you vote for this? What an idiot. Who thinks this is their great local representative? Check out this stupid thing that she said on submarines. Submarines can hold their breath for a very, very long time. Oh, yeah? Yeah. That is your senator. We're all idiots. Why are we doing this with this idiot? This is insane. Listen to this.
Now, is it true that pump jet submarines can only stay underwater for 20 minutes?
No, Senator. I do not know what you're referring to about pump jet submarines remaining underwater for 20 minutes. Can I just be clear again? A pump jet is a form of propeller. It has no bearing on how deep a submarine can go, how long it can stay underwater. They are matters that pertain to the platform design of the submarine.
What about a diesel sub? So we are going
to buy diesel electric submarines, and I can assure you, Senator, they're going to stay underwater for much longer than 20 minutes. We have
3 days for 3 days. What's the period of time?
I'm not going to reveal what our requirements are for submerged endurance. That is classified. But
I don't think it's classified because actually this is.
I don't think it's classified. I think we should be allowed to tell the public exactly how long a submarine can stay underwater, because that's the perfect thing that you should have in a public hearing for Miss Hanson. I mean, truly spectacularly owning the public and showing us exactly what the representation is. And I give you the Pauline Hanson 5 minutes of minute and a half of stupidity.
So you don't get to make the call on what's classified and unclassified in this conversation.
Yeah.
So you can't.
Rear Admiral.
So you can't disclose, which is knowledge of how long a diesel can stay underwater compared to what a nuclear sub can stay underwater.
A diesel electric submarine can stay underwater depending on the way it's designed. So that refers to matters about the size of the battery, the manner in which the hotel load, which is the power that is consumed by the submarine when it's operating, is used, and so forth. There are a number of factors that go into the period of time that a diesel electric submarine can remain submerged, Senator.
This Barracuda.
See, and then she goes on to ask more crazy question. I mean, this is what we have for an intellectually, apparently honest woman. This is how we're supposed to have her as representing us. This isn't like a little skit. No, this is the real Pauline Hanson sitting in a real parliamentary hearing, asking real questions. Yeah, we're doing totally fine in our ecosystem of politics when that happens to be the end game. At some point, we have to say, no, we're not gonna allow her to carry our narrative at all on our nation. This is as good as watching the American version of Marjorie Taylor Greene just say things. We have our own idiots. and I'm not happy about it. So that is it for tonight. I want to thank everyone that was able to pop in and out. I know no one stayed consistently, but I do want to say thank you for coming. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and a wonderful week. Thank you for watching. See you same time next week. Have a good one. Bye.